Hi, good morning, you guys. I am out of the book of Romans today, specifically Romans 12, and I will be highlighting the importance of sacrifice. The importance of sacrifice, you guys. So during the fast, it was highlighted for me that the more that I take myself out of it, the more I am fully obedient to God, you guys. And this has been a struggle for me because, the enemy likes to use our trauma to make us feel like God wasn't in the pain with us, right? And sometimes when we don't hear God's voice right away, we feel like, God, why have you left me? Why have you left me in the desert alone? And this reminds me when Jesus was on that boat with the disciples and the boat was shaking and the disciples were scared and Jesus was he was just asleep. And although Jesus was there, he was silent. Doesn't mean that the disciples were alone, right? Jesus was there in the struggle with them, right? But Jesus is Jesus. He wasn't afraid. Fear doesn't come from the Lord. And he woke up and he rebuked the sea from making the boat shake, right? From making the boat stop them from where they were headed to, you guys. Just because we don't hear God's voice right away does not mean that he isn't in the pain with us, you guys. But back to Romans, right? Romans urges us, you guys, that we are not to be conformed by this age, meaning the world system that leaves God out of it. But we're to be transformed by a renewing of the mind, you guys, right? See, trauma likes to keep us in that place of fear. It likes to keep us in the place where we don't have forgiveness. We have ego, we have anger, we have pride. But God urges us to have a renewing of the mind, you guys, right? And God has all of us, you guys. When we have a renewing of the mind, God has all of us. The world has none of us, right? He brings his thoughts in line with our thoughts. And that's where the renewing begins. And for me, you guys, as a new Christian, as a cardinal Christian, this has been an area of struggle for me because I would chase the success because that's what the world taught me. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful. That's not what I'm saying. But I would chase the success and I will self-promote and I will chase all the ambition, but not necessarily chase after God. I will put a pretty bow at the end and thank God, but I didn't submit my plans to God all the time, right? So I will go after the career and I will do all these things because by society's standards, this is what we're supposed to do. But I was spiritually in darkness at the time because although I knew of God, I did not have a relationship with God, right? But when we have a renewing of the mind, we don't have things that are by society standards. We surrender everything to God. We submit all of our plans to God. See, society has tricked us into believing, you guys, that the aesthetics, everything from the outside, as long as it looks good, as long as we feel good from the outside, everything's okay. But the inside is lacking. But as long as you feel good and you are good, that's not necessarily true because, you guys, feelings are fleeting. But the only thing that isn't fleeting is God. Society teaches us that we need to just put ourselves first. But if we just put ourselves first, where does that leave room for God? Right? But when we center ourselves around God, you guys, we are full. When we center ourselves around God, we are complete, you guys. See, the ruler of this world, Satan, has shaped society in a way that is contrary to the beliefs of God. So much so that when you start speaking the truth, people are offended because people are only wanting to please their flesh, you guys, and not realizing that the flesh is the lowest part of us, that the flesh goes against the spirit, and that the highest form of us is our spirit, and that when we go against the flesh, we are getting closer to God, you guys. Being shaped by society means that we get the glory, not God. It means that we believe that everything that we have achieved had come with our own merits, not God, and that's false. We start to become ruled by self. Society encourages that we go against we go against the spirit. It encourages instant gratification and only doing what makes you happy. Well, the trouble in that is there's no room for God to move if you're only reliant on what makes you happy. God knows more of us than we know about ourselves, you guys, right? Society has also attempted to corrupt our self-esteem and self-image. It teaches children and adults that the more likes you have, the more worthy you are, right? That the more that our worth comes from people, not from God. And when you truly have a renewing of the mind, you understand that the only validation that you need comes from God, not from people. It comes from the one who created us, not his creations. So Romans 12:2 says, once you renew your mind, you realize that your actions should be pleasing to God. Your actions should be pleasing, and it should align with his perfect will for our lives, you guys. Society glorifies the opposite of God's heart. God wants you to understand that our bodies are a temple, pleasing and holy to Christ. Holy to Christ. But it's hard to combat that when you're repeatedly bombarded with sexual imagery. When you're repeatedly bombarded with things that are supposed to please the flesh. You guys, culture can't make you change negative patterns. Only God can do that. Culture can't teach you consistency. God can do that. Because in order to truly have a renewing of the mind, God's Spirit has to rest on us. Not by our own strength, but the strength of our Father. Our Father. The Bible in 12:1 says that our bodies are a living sacrifice. God isn't a God that likes to compete. So he's not willing to compete with our idolatry. He's not willing to compete with our sexual immorality. He's not willing to compete with our gluttony. He's not willing to compete, you guys, with the things that you put above him. You guys, the things that you think of more than God, you are idolizing that thing. God is asking you to sacrifice these things. What are you willing to sacrifice? Is it substance use? Is it social media for a time? If it's something that you are addicted to, I am urging you guys to leave it at the altar. And when I say leave it and don't pick it back up. See, in my earlier walks, I would try to leave things at the altar and say, I'm not going to pick it up, but I end up picking it up a week or two later. And when I'm talking about the things I would pick up were my bad habits, my bad patterns, you guys. But leave it and submit it to God, right? Romans 8:13 says, for if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the misdeeds of the body, you will live. It's important that you know it so you can kill it. Like Apostle Paul says that he says that we are to die of our flesh daily. What does that look like? It looks like surrendering it to God. Whatever we don't lay down is our mini God. Whatever we don't lay down, you guys, is our mini God. God doesn't want just our routine, you guys. He doesn't want our routine. He doesn't want something that you're just doing as a checklist to him. He wants your sacrifice. And when one sacrifice gets too easy to let go of, find another one. That's why it's important to do a spiritual checkup. Because when we do these spiritual checkups, you guys, we find out there's something that we're not sacrificing fully. So I hope this message has really helped you guys. I'm going to leave with this. There's so much more I wrote in my notes, but I'm going to leave and close with Matthew 7:3-4, which states that the wide road, you guys, the wide road leads to destruction, but God wants us to go down the narrow road that leads to life. You see, the wide road is a road that most people go down through. And it's easy to want to go down that wide road because we see some of our old friends down there. It looks fun. But God is urging us to be holy and set apart. And he's urging us to go down the narrow road, you guys. Go down the narrow road. And sometimes that looks like letting go of baggage that's holding you back from going down that narrow road. You see, the wide road leaves room for pain. It leaves room for damage. It leaves room for you to bring all your baggage. But that narrow road, it entails you to let go of baggage. Let go of that unforgiveness. Let go of that pain. Let go of all the things that's holding you back from being set apart. And go down that narrow road. I hope this message has helped. If this message has blessed you, please subscribe. Have a great day.